So thank you all. Thank you for coming and congratulations. Thank you, Dr. Shamika. We are here for the presentation of the key findings. We will now have the presentation from the Young Lives Longitudinal Study, Round 7. The presentation will provide an in-depth understanding of the findings and their implications. I now request Ms. Stuti Kakkar to chair this session. Dr. Singh?
कोई आपका चल रहा शॉट
to speak on what Shamika is this book. Yeah, would you like to start with that?
So good morning, friends and colleagues. It's wonderful to have you here. And what we're going to present to you today is the first cut, very preliminary findings from round 7, which we conducted in 23-24. This is our survey, last round. Many of you have been with us in previous round disseminations, and you know this is just the trailer. The real movie is yet to come when we do our papers, we do our regressions, and we're able to talk about causality, because this is just descriptive right now. This is the first cut of the data, which we're always excited to come out with, because it gives us ideas for future research. So, this will raise more questions than answers, to be honest. But yes, it's a very important beginning for sure. So just to give you an idea of, for those who are not very familiar, this is Young Lives is a 4-country study. We began as a childhood poverty study. Now we're a study of poverty and inequity, because the children who we started studying in 2002, who were 1 and 8, are now 22 and 29. So young adults, many of them with children of their own. In fact, there was a small study we did with the support of UNICEF to study the babies of the younger cohort and the older cohort a couple of years ago. So what we are doing is following 12,000 children over this period of about 21 years already in 4 countries, Peru, Ethiopia, Vietnam, and India. In India, we're in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Yeah, we started in a 1-state study. Now we're a 2-state study from 2014 by default. And of course, we started with using a pro-poor sample and really looking at a life course perspective, which means we cut across all thematic areas. This is not an education or an agriculture or a nutrition study. This is a study which looks at all dimensions of young people's lives and individuals' life, cutting across education, nutrition, health. And what we're going to present today is really looking at education, health, as well as well-being, and looking at family formation and labor market transition. So this is what we're going to present to you today. So here you can see the 1-year-olds in the first row. You can see the 1-year-olds are now 22 in round 7 in the survey that we conducted. And the 8-year-olds, when we started, with 1,000 of those, are now, of course, 29. Many of them are now formally settled in the labor market. So 22-year-olds are still transitioning into the labor market, right? We've also, because we're a mixed method study, we have done 5 rounds of qualitative research. We've also done, some studies on school surveys. We did a primary school survey. We did a secondary school survey. During the pandemic, we also did a head teacher survey to understand what are the challenges they faced. And we did a disability study from our cohort, looking at people with disabilities and what challenges they faced during the pandemic. We were able to reach these very vulnerable populations very easily during the pandemic. In fact, we did 5 telephone surveys instead of doing round 6 face-to-face survey. And we could continue to reach out, thanks to Dr. Reddy and his team, who are able to keep tracking, we do tracking between rounds. We are very grateful to FCDO for having given us core funding all these years. We are also funded now by Wellcome Trust and others. In fact, we've done a very exciting addition to the last round where for the first time we took hair samples for doing cortisol testing to look at stress. So that will be the next dissemination. We've just done the analysis, the lab analysis has happened, and of course lots of challenges even in couriering things back to the UK from here, but then never mind, that's another day's story. So we've been doing both mixed methods, and it's very important because, for example, I think what Dr. Shamika Ravi just said, when we found questions related to, say, in 2009, I think for the first time, we realized that there was a huge shift for children to the private schools, to low-fee charging private schools. We were one of the first ones to actually, shout out and say, older cohort at age, 12, we found only 22% in private schools. It had doubled to 44% in 2009, 7 years later. And we said, oh my God, this is a phenomenon that now needs to be studied. Of course, later, a lot of studies were done, but what I'm trying to say is a longitudinal study allows you inter-cohort comparison. 7 years, they were born 7 years apart. It actually allows you and actually gives you warning signals. That something's happening. Hello, do a bigger study. Of course, our sample is still limited to just 2 states, but it gives you a lot of warning signals that, often that require policy attention. Similarly, I think the other thing we found was amongst our older cohort, when we were doing round 4, we found that by round 4 and 5, we found almost 35% by 19 of our girls were married. Now, at that time, I remember Stuti Kakkar was there for our dissemination, and she said, oh my God, I never thought it could be so high. Can you do the analysis of the census for us? And we did a study with NCPCR on analyzing the census and identifying pockets which had very high incidence of child marriage from the census. And we actually looked at the first top 20 districts which needed immediate attention, and we did an intervention with NCPCR and SCPCR. So I think sometimes one small step, research evidence can actually trigger off a lot more studies. So we are able to do not just inter-cohort comparison of 7 years apart, but also intra-cohort comparison. What's happening to them as they're growing older? And you can see that we've tracked the 1-year-olds, which means right from the time they were little babies to the time they went to preschools, to school, secondary school, transition into the labor market. Many of them married at certain ages, and then, of course, now the older cohort are very well established in the labor market or not at all, which we will tell you the story another time. So just the sample, right now the younger cohort were 2011 in round 1. This is reduced to 1826. The older cohort were 1,000 plus, which is now 847. So overall, if you look at the attrition rate, and I'm just showing you Ethiopia, India, and Peru. India has the lowest attrition rate of 11.5% total. So, you've got the older cohort, which is a higher attrition rate. And a lot of reasons for attrition. One, of course, there are few deaths that happen, but also many of them sometimes you're not able to trace despite all our efforts. There's international migration that has happened, and of course some refusals. Some of the young people who got married, you go into families, and I know the team makes so much effort, going to the parent, making them ring up the in-laws to say, this team will be coming, we know them for many years, you can trust them, yet there may be a refusal to say, no, we don't want you to talk to our daughter-in-law. Or the girl has just got engaged, I know, in old Hyderabad, one of our urban sites. Some family said, my daughter's engaged, now you cannot talk to her. So there are many reasons for refusals also, and I mean, those are genuine, things you can't go beyond. But I think for a study of 21 years, I think 11.5% attrition is wonderful, and I think we need to give CES a big round of supervisors over the last 21 years. And in fact, I know Dr. Sess is always telling us because of your study, we've had to now make them permanent employees. But well done. Thank you. So yes, so just in terms of giving you the demographic characteristics in round 7, you can see the gender breakup of the OCs in darker color, the YCs are in the lighter purple. So you can see that there are, amongst the older cohort, there are more women, and amongst the younger cohort, there are more men. The rural urban, yes, Dr. Shamika, we are still following the same urban rural as defined by the administration. Probably it could be different, but yes, we have 1/3 of our population in urban areas. If you look at the older cohort, which is in dark color, you can see 72% married, whereas amongst the younger cohort, you just have 24% married, right? Because this is, remember, they are of different ages, 29 and 22, so there are bound to be differences. And I'm going to now hand over to Professor Revati to go through the education and skills section and give you some of the top headlines related to
क्लबिंग होगी ऐसे रखो दीपक यहीं रखो चेंज कर वाइट कर
Thank you, Dr. Dev. As Chair and Chief Guest and audience here. Good morning to all. The education fact sheet, it's education
चेंज कर लो दीपक जी
attainment.
दो बंदों को छोड़ दो
Education attainment, as we know that the
देखो
younger cohort and older cohort together is 2673, and where the younger cohort is 1826 and older cohort is 847. And the education attainment of 22-year-old. Here it's the 22-year-old comparison in round 5 in 2016 and round 7 in 2023. So it was older cohort in round 5, that is 2016, at the age of 22, and round 7 younger cohort at the age of 22. So the 22-year-old apart 7 years. So what is the education attainment that has happened over a period of 22 years? That's what this shows. So I think obviously the primary only, the percentage studied up to primary only has fallen over a period of time, and then 2023 it's less, and upper primary also it's less. And if we look at the completion rates of lower secondary and above, it's 81% in 2016, which has increased. So completion has increased. That means we add up all these minus the primary and upper primary. And again, upper secondary also it increased to from 72 to 81%. And the shift is, one can see the occasional has reduced, fallen. And then the university, ever enrolled in university has increased from 44 to 55%. So that's the good news. More percentage of the children are going into or getting enrolled in university education. And then the STEM, within the university education, if you look at STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, earlier it was 22%, now which has increased to 45%. So it's an increase. And there's no gender differential also. So it's girls, boys, everybody is going for STEM. And going by the wealth index, because we have sliced this data across gender, caste, and wealth index. So if you look at the wealth index, it's the composite index that reflects the welfare of the household members in terms of quality housing as well as access to basic services. So that's the wealth index taken in the round 1. According to that, it's classified into 3: bottom, middle, and then the top, and looked at what is the kind of transition that has happened in the education attainment across these terciles. So you find there is progress. Education attainment in higher education attainment has progressed within men and women, SC, ST, BC, OC, compared to 2016 and 23, there is a progress because overall progress is there, and across all these social groups is also there. But there is a gap also within the cohort, like a younger cohort in 2023, there is a gap, and then we have still there's some kind of a catch-up which is required on part of women especially in the university education, and disadvantaged caste, and those who are born into bottom tertile households, and that is they are less likely to complete higher education or get enrolled in higher education. So we also looked at average years of schooling. The average years of schooling has increased, is 10 years, 10.8 years. And for women, it was lesser in the earlier round. I mean, in round 5. But it is 10.8 in this in 2023. And the grade progression is also an improvement. Grade progression is exactly what's a normative age at which they complete their grade. So that also there is an improvement when they have entered and completed at that relevant age group without skipping and at the official entrance age. So that has also increased higher secondary normative age from 54% in 2016 to 61. So overall, this grade progression is also satisfactory. The second aspect that has been studied in this fact sheet was actually the fact sheet studies 3 aspects: educational attainment, access to digital skills, and also reading comprehension, whether there is any progression in the reading comprehension. So access to digital devices, it has looked at 3 variables where ever used internet and used internet daily, because using internet daily is more important in these days, and also ever used computer. So there is a gender gap. If you look at internet, there is a huge gap, a huge improvement from 2016 to 2023, both in older cohort as well as the younger cohort. And where almost it has jumped to 83, 82% in the case of older cohort, and in the case of younger cohort, it is 89, 88%. But still, if you look at gender gap, there is a gender gap where 78% of younger cohort of women use internet daily. That is looking at the use of internet, daily use of internet, whereas it is 97% in case of men. So that difference is there. And even in the case of wealth, I mean, bottom and poorest and the top kind of deciles, there is top group which is 96%, whereas the poorest households it is lesser at 83%. So that means the level has increased, but there is a kind of difference. Sorry. Then also the women especially from the SC and ST, so a lower percentage of them used in internet every day. But this is regarding computer and laptops, the access is still almost the same. YC, it is ever used a computer, it has increased from around 11% to around 27%. But in the case of older cohort, it has not much changed, from 21% to only 24%. So even among the 22-year-old also, not much change has happened regarding access to computer, where I think it is, if you look at YC 2023, you find that it is 27% and OC is 21%. So access to computers is one thing that I think we have to, the policy can focus on. And again, there are disparities across economic status. Sorry, this is the third one. Disparities across economic status is high. I think even within YC, you can see that top decile is 46% are having access to computers, whereas bottom is only 12%. So within the cohort, in 2023,
Okay,
this
recording नहीं कर रहा?
disparity is here, which needs to be
Cut कर रहा.
addressed. So we move on to the third
Cut
aspect
recording
that
कर रहे
has
हैं ना?
been there in the fact
Okay.
sheet. That's the reading comprehension. The reading comprehension is a comparison of 15-year-old and 22-year-old of younger cohort, because the progression that has happened over a period of time from 15 years to 22 years, that has been captured here. And reading comprehension has been captured through giving passages and questions on the passage. They have to answer the questions on the passage. So it's the same passage that has been given in both the rounds, and some questions are common to both rounds, but some two questions have been there are new questions which increased with I think little above the age of 15 years, so that to capture the 22-year-old comprehension level. So the comparison has been made between the same items of the questions that are there, and look at the averages that are there. So this is the average in when they were 15-year-old was 43.4. 43.4% of children could answer correctly the four common items that were given to them in both the rounds. And it's not much changed in 22 years. The same questions, same passage, but over a period of time. That means there is stagnation in the comprehension and understanding the correct questions. So that is one thing. And the two questions that are little appropriate to the age of 22 years also have been asked. There also it remains more or less the same. So, this is, there may be why is it those kind of questions if we try to understand, though it has not been that much in the fact sheet. They might have left the studies and entered into the labor market, but anyway, we have to probe more deeper into why this has happened. But accepting that there is a stagnation in this, in the learning comprehension is a finding from this. So I think aligning with SDGs, if we look at aligning with the SDGs education attainment, we have attained progress in terms of enrollment of children, even in the at the secondary level. But some gender disparities are there, where SDG 4.5 says that is the disparities in education outcomes. Women are lagging behind, especially in access to university education, higher education. And then the learning outcomes, I think we have to focus more on the learning outcomes, the quality and teaching learning process. And also standards and all these aligning with SDG 4.6, that is grade appropriate curricular standards and quality education that has to be focused. Thank you.
As we continue with health nutrition, I just want to also say that across the three countries, Ethiopia also found more gains in reading comprehension. Peru was the only country where we found there were gains. And I think that's the comparison we need to study now. What is it that, those young people were getting in Peru that we are not giving? So that's interesting also, because when you look at the three countries, across the countries, what is happening? Gives us, to the cohorts you can also make those. So I'm going to take you through the health and well-being sections. So what we notice is, again, you're looking at over time what's happening at the age of 12, 15, 19, 22 for the younger cohort and the older cohort. Like I said, we can make inter-cohort comparisons and also intra-cohort comparisons. So the OCs are in the dark bars. And you can see the older cohort, if you see over time, just look at the dark bars. Over time, the dark bars, are the underweight, that's underweight. And you can see underweight are actually decreasing over time, right? There is definitely improvement in that. But if you look at overweight or obesity, which is where we're looking at the lighter color bars, you can see the YCs have moved up from at 19, because it was a pandemic, we were not able to do the anthropometric measures for the YCs. So you can see that's a missing bar at 19. But just look at the YCs at 15, 7% moving to 21% at age 22. Yeah. And I mean, those figures are, something worrying, which we need to worry about. OCs were 13% at age 22, YCs are now 21%. Yeah. So we've got a double burden happening. Yeah. So we've got underweight and overweight. And I think, how do we tackle this? And we talked about market forces just now. We are pushing the, fast food. We are pushing the market forces are pushing juices and processed foods. How do we balance, what is happening even to a sample which is probably eating the wrong kind of food also. So I think this is something that we need to definitely look into. In terms of food insecurity, now, food insecurity, we used a very large questionnaire, and I'm now giving you just the access to food. So within our sample, there were barely anybody who went hungry. Yeah. So we asked the two questions, which were whether you or any household member go to sleep at night hungry because there was not enough food. And the second question was, did you or any household member go a whole day and night without eating because there was not enough food? And you can see that less than 1% said yes to this, which means there's no hunger. Yeah. But when we went further and we looked at a whole range of other questions being added to it, where we have looked at quantity of food, is there adequate quantity for everybody in the household, where we've looked at the kind of nutrition that you're getting, that's when we are getting 71% who are moderately food insecure, which is very high. Yeah. But also remember, this is subjective opinion of people when they answer, right? And I think this is something we need to do more work on. This was an adapted version from the Household Food Insecurity Access Scale, which we have adapted to measure availability, accessibility, and utilization. But just once again, the caveat being that it's not that they were going hungry. Yeah? Hunger, you can see those questions being answered, there barely anybody. But yes, when there's food insecurity, looking at all dimensions, then it is still something that we need to worry about. In terms of subjective well-being, definitely there has been improvement, especially post-pandemic, because if you see the younger cohort in the green line and the older cohort in the red line, so you see at age 19 and 25, which was what ages they were during the pandemic, there is a dip, for both older cohort and younger cohort. And subjective well-being, we use the Pentrose ladder. Many of you may be familiar with it, where you ask them where would you put yourself on the ladder starting from 0 to 7. Where would you see yourself in comparison to other people, etc. And obviously, I think all of us, our subjective well-being must have been at a low at that time. But the good news is it's all come back after post-pandemic. In fact, they're almost at the same level for both older cohort and younger cohort. So that's the good news. In terms of mental health symptoms, both, we measured depression as well as anxiety as well as stress, in fact. And in terms of stress, which we use PSS 10, almost 6 out of every 10 participants exhibit at least moderate stress in 2023. But if you look at the YC by gender, and you can look at men and women and total, you can see that you have got in 21 to about 8.2, which has increased to 9.1 in terms of at least mild anxiety. And in terms of mild depression, it has come down slightly, but hardly any change from 10.3 to 10.1 in 2023. Women actually have much higher levels of depression than men. Men have actually, from post-pandemic, you can see, there is basically an improvement. But for women, it has got worse. This is something also that we need to understand further. We can't attribute causality at this point, but this is a phenomena that we are observing through the data. So just in terms of telling you, for depression, we use THQ8 and anxiety neoscan 7. Moving on to work and family lives. If you're looking at, what were the YC doing at 22 and what were the OC doing at 22 in 2016, you will see that if you look at the bottom two, of the bars, that is studying only, the dark, and the lighter one is studying and working. So if you add these two up, you will find that there were about 21% of the OC who were either studying or studying and working, right? But amongst the YC, now this has increased to 29%. Yeah? So there is definitely that shift. The last bar, the part of the bars, are the not in education, employment or training, the NEET category, what we call NEET. No change over time. Yeah? So obviously what is happening is that now the younger cohort is moving into the labor market later than the older cohort, right? Because there are more people studying or studying and working. But the number of people in the NEET category remains stagnant. So let's find out more about that. So if you look at the OCs and the YCs, over time and over age, now we're moving away from just 22, you can see that, in the OCs at age 15, now if you just do a comparison, even at age 15, the YCs there were more people studying and working, even at age 15. Now, this working bit I want to just focus on. At 15, there were people who were barely 7% NEET, 4% amongst the YC, 7% amongst the OC. In terms of working only, 8% of the YCs were working vis-a-vis 15%, which means people who were, basically it's child labor if they were in hazardous work. I can't comment right now, but they were 15. So they have to be in hazardous work to be called child labor, but they were working. Yeah, but you can see the numbers have reduced, it's almost half, from 15% to 8%, which is good news. At age 19, you can see that, again, the NEET category hasn't really gone up tremendously. But this is at age 22, you can see that shift, because now at age 19, you had almost 50% even of the OCs who were studying or studying and working. YC, there was 71%. So the change happened at age 19 between the YCs and the OCs in terms of studying and, studying and working. Which almost, you can see 50% for the OCs, the last two bars at age 19, which moved up to 71%. And the ones working reduced from 39% for the OCs to 21% for the YCs. Yeah, so many more people were studying, or studying and working amongst the YC, which is all very positive. And I just told you the 22-year-olds, we just discussed that, we've already said that the NEET remains the same over time. Yes, more people are studying and working amongst the YC, which is all a good positive side. Let's look at NEET a little further. Yeah, and majority of the NEET that you are seeing are actually women. You see the last part of the bars. 34% of the OCs, women were in NEET, vis-a-vis 7% of the men. This 7% hasn't changed for the men. Yeah, even for the YC, it remains 7% in 2023, but it becomes 37%. The NEET category is actually increased for the women by 3 percentage points. So if you do a gender segregation, you can see who's the big chunk of people not in education. And I think you were talking about the care that women, the burden of care that women have. This is probably because of that. Again, this is not a study we've done. This is not a question that we've analyzed. So this is just hypothetically. We can assume that is the case. And of course, you can again see that 25% of women young women at 22 were either studying or in full time, which is 20%, 5% studying and working, which makes it 25. But for men, it is more. It's 33. Yeah. So the gender gap at at age 22 becomes more evident. Yeah. Again, if you look at by caste, because we can drill down the same thing by caste, you can see that if you look at OCs and YCs, was studying or studying and working amongst the OC in 2016. This has moved to 35% for the STs. Yeah, studying or studying and working, the ST category. So you can see that there has been progress even amongst the most socially disadvantaged. There is some progress. In fact, but if you look at your NEET also has decreased for the STs, increased, almost double for the SCs, from 11 to 21. So probably a mixed method study which focuses on SCs needs to be done now to understand this phenomena. And BCs also there's not much change, but amongst the STs and the OCs, NEET category is actually reduced. So, you need to look at all these factors together to give us ideas of what is the next research to be done. Like I said, these are just descriptors. We can't do causality, we can't talk about causation right now, but it does give you ideas of what we need to investigate further and what studies need to be done further. In terms of, you're looking at the work that, that people are doing, you can see that despite decrease in need amongst the top tercile, this is by wealth, you look at the bottom, middle and top, definitely there is a decrease in need amongst the top tercile from 28% to 23%. Work has, this is still, if you see 23% is highest even today, compared to the bottom and the top tercile, which means maybe these are people who are out of choice not working. Yeah. Because that is another phenomenon we know. That the minute you have a little more, resources in the house, sometimes traditional values kick in and the woman stays back. So this is another very interesting phenomenon that these figures show us. So the top wealth tercile actually sees a decrease, in need. But if you look at the bottom tercile, there is an increase. Middle tercile also there is a slight increase. But if you look at the study, the OCs were 28% of the top terciles full-time and studying and working. This has increased now to 36%. So huge increase amongst the top tercile, you can see. And in terms of the middle tercile, it's 20% studying and working. 62% were working full-time amongst the middle tercile in 2016. This is reduced now to 50% at 22. These are all very interesting figures, but again, they need to be unpacked. They need to, a lot more analysis needs to be done. We've got some very interesting modules we actually did this year. The last survey, we've actually looked at a whole module on risk-taking behaviors and entrepreneurship. We've also got a whole module which needs to be analyzed, of course. We've also got a module which asks people whether they would change their jobs based on more pay, but maybe no contract. Contract, longer distance, more working hours. So to see how gender differences come and kick in job choices, what kind of work are they looking for? Because these are questions we don't have answers for right now. And we're looking at a proper sample to get an idea of what are they looking for, what are their aspirations, what do they really want. So all those things will probably throw up much more light on these questions that we are raising. Now, in terms of job quality, we just said 44% in 2016 had gone into higher education. We are now at 55%. But job quality, again, at 22 for YCs, only 7% had written contracts amongst those working. 36% worked more than 48 hours a week. And 54% said they were not satisfied with work. So ultimately now, and if you look at even we now presented in the fact sheet the older cohort, but I know my team did some work on that, and they were telling me 8.7% of the 29-year-olds have formal contracts. That's it. So now that is something that we really need to worry about. Formal contracts, okay, so you can be in a contractual job, but you can still have a written contract. You may not be a permanent employee. Everybody is not going to get jobs which are going. And we actually drilled down yesterday because this fascinated us so much, and this is not in the fact sheets, but we were looking at the data to say that, who are the ones who have the contracts, and amongst the younger cohort, I think almost 40% plus were in the IT sector, those who had. Few amongst these 7%, they were in the IT sector, so probably more urban-based, etc., etc. The rest we don't know right now because the fact sheets haven't gone into this, right? So yes, I think men, women, belt size, urban, rural, all caste groups, nobody seems to have written contracts. Look at it. Urban is also 14%, rural is 4%, OCs are 11%. Yeah. Women are more for some reason than men, so 6% and 8%. It does throw up the fact that this is something that we really have to look into. Unpaid work, because we did the time use data we collect time use data in every round. Women do more than 2 times unpaid care work, not surprising, than men at age 22. So you can see unpaid care work of OC and YCs, and you can see that older cohort women did 5.6 hours, YC do 5.7 hours. The men, good news is from 1.4 has gone up to 2. Are they helping? I don't know. I'm hoping there's a positive side in this. I don't want to, interpret it too much, but yes. We've also, if you look at, at age 15 and 22, amongst the women and men, you can see that, this is YCs only. You can see that there is definitely a huge shift. There was hardly any, difference between the men and women at age 50. But look at it at age 22. Yeah, so lots of changes over time as they grow older. More men, of course, amongst YC, which I said is good, but who are doing some unpaid care work. But yes, I think women we need to worry about and worry. No wonder they're not in the, in the labor market often. Maybe out of choice, we don't know, but that's the study to be done. Child marriages, good news, it's come down. So the legal age for women being 18, it reduced from 25 to 13%. Men, barely any men get married before 21, so from 7 it's come down to 3%. So when, there are very few who are going into child marriages and getting married before 21. Remember the age is different, 18 and 21. That's a good sign. But if you look at child marriage by area of residence, you can see there is definitely the OC and YC both. You can see that there was always more rural, the trend is more rural than urban. It was very high amongst the STs as well as SCs and VCs, the least among the OCs, and I think that continues, though what you can see is that there is definitely the maximum reduction in child marriages will happen for the SCs, STs and VCs, which were very high. It's almost halved, almost almost. So that's the good news. So there is some positive trend that you can see 7 years apart for our children. Motherhood too, by 19, when you say early motherhood, which is how many of them gave birth, it's reduced from 27 to 18, at the same age by 19. The older cohort, which was 27% had become mothers, but now it's reduced to 18 amongst the younger cohort by 19. So yes, I think I'm going to just end by saying participants born in the top percentile obviously seems to get the head start. Even in a pro-4 sample, this is, right? The top percentile in a pro-4 sample. Definitely have a head start. More likely to be studying full-time, less likely to be employed at 22, married or have a child. And those from the bottom tercile is just the opposite. You've got 74% of the top tercile studying vis-a-vis 40% of the bottom tercile, this is amongst the YCs in 23. You've got bottom tercile, well tercile, 63% employed vis-a-vis 47%, because obviously the top tercile was probably studying. And marriage and or being a parent also 28% was being 17%. So the early inequalities also continues through life, even at age 22, it's very obvious. So I'm going to end because I know Dr. Shamika has
So I'll tell you from where I'm coming, I've seen a lot of these statistics and I'm seeing mirroring of what we have found in the larger national surveys. And I'll try and give, there are many, many things. That's why this is so fascinating area. Reports are always wonderful because it's so rich in the kind of information and insights that you produce. On the reading comprehension, I think that's a troubling issue. That despite this remaining, most of our past literature on development in education only looks at years of education, and that used to be a tick box. The longer the number of years, we believe you are more educated. But clearly that is not happening. What we might need to do is also now look at, these are, I presume, paper pencil or paper pen. These are digital. Did they see this? So there will be no, but then, by the way, this is not young life. This is also must be because we are digitizing. We are digitizing, and which is a more efficient way to do. But there is a difference because we are all on the phone now, right? And also, by the way, this is a computer. And I think the way we define computer, unless we define it from an education curriculum point of view, the kids are also on the mobile phone. In fact, during the pandemic, several studies were done to show that households which had access to phones and smartphones, there the learning losses have been lesser. Right? So today, phone is a very important medium. What you're also seeing in the National Household Consumption Expenditure Survey is that the purchase of computer has risen, but nothing significant. But the purchase of mobile phone has skyrocketed, which also tells you that people, I mean, this is a very smart device. So then we need to think about why computer. Why are we looking at computers? Number one, if we believe that it's important for education, then we need to also understand the curriculum and how much it is computerized and what is screen time doing. I think these are new age questions, but we have to be prepared to answer because it will also feed into curriculum design, etc. The overweight problem, I think, is we are that generation which will have studied underweight until 5 years back. Studying wasting used to be our big concern, and now it's overweight, right? But it obviously requires much more, it's not better understanding, I think we do understand. The policy, the levers, the instruments that we have, however, are not going to be that simple. Because for stunting, wasting, midday meal started, many interventions to the common making food available. But today it's not so much the availability. In fact, again, household consumption expenditure survey is telling us that for the top quintile households, 22% of their overall expenditure is going into packaged and processed food. If that is the direction in which the society is moving, then these results, they should not surprise us. What we should be concerned about, though, is from the medical side, first of all, the definition of overweight versus obese and etc. I mean, those definitions will also matter, BMI and so on. But beyond that, we don't really measure weight in schools the way we ought to be. Because these things, I think, household has an important, it's a point of intervention. Schools are equally important. So just like the way we address stunting wasting, we have to address overweight also from the curriculum of school, the regular annual checkups, taking them very seriously, then looking at the kind of sports and other interventions that happen again within the school. But as economists, this is a natural progression, unfortunately. As agrarian societies develop, packaging, processing of food is the value creation that is going to happen. That is where the jobs are. That is what freeing up labor time also means having packaged processed food. In fact, in many parts of Eastern Asia, you have kitchenless homes. And this is a rising trend because fresh food is available outside. Now we can tell FSSAI that fresh food को आप ठीक तरह से qualify करिए, give us a sense of, but that will still be a limited exercise. The more kurkure, the more packaged food, we will have to then think of this as an independent problem and sort of think of what interventions. The moderate food insecurity, I take that very seriously. First, it's perception based. I also feel I eat very badly. Right? I'm also very unhappy with my job. Now, perception-based studies, I think we as researchers have to make it a little bit more to the extent we can. I mean, we can't always. But perception-based study can be narrowed down. For instance, to certain metrics, as a fresh fruits. And I'll tell you, I'm coming from the anemia and other kind of literature. We know that cereal is the largest, most common source of iron, because we fortify it. Now think how policy is made. We treat these things as mechanical exercise. That people don't have iron, high risk pregnancy, etc. Anemia is a very big debilitator, so therefore enters into all kinds of other problems. So anemia we have to handle. Anemia ke liye kya chahiye? We need to give people iron. How do we give them? Let's fortify the rice. You see how mechanically we are progressing, and hence now we do a lot of fortification. There's a big budget for fortification. But now the new research that we have done is showing us, and very strongly and consistently, that the iron that you get from rice or any form, when it is in the amount of iron, it is not as useful, as effective in lowering anemia than when you get iron from multiple sources. For instance, households in Kerala, 44% of their iron comes from fresh fruits. While in Rajasthan, which is the other end of the spectrum, 84% iron comes from cereals. Now, the absorption level of the fortified rice, the kind of that body has limitations, you're not going to be able to absorb. So when you treat policy as a mechanical exercise, we will get mechanical solutions. It has impact. That's why we're not saying we'll stop about fortification. We have to continue because it's still a huge problem, but the long-term solution is in diversity. And those are things which are happening right now. You measured for all quintiles, all states, rural, urban. Indians are eating more variety. Can we then define moderate problem and malnutrition of food intake? Maybe in the form of what are the food items that we can objectively then measure. I think fresh fruits is a good measure. Fresh fruits has a lot of different. So we'll have to borrow some knowledge from. So then, perfect. Then let's also look at some. Let's look at those. And uske baad objectively try and see the measure of that vis-a-vis what people believe, how they feel. This is now, you are exactly finding a problem which is it's a larger global problem called youth inactivity. Youth do not want to work until they have to work. It's a global problem. The OECD very euphemistically calls it youth inactivity, but basically it's telling us that until the age of 30, which means till your parents give you out, or they tell you, "Bas, ab kya kar gaya?" Do something with your life. Till the age of 30, we are noticing this trend. Ye BLFS may be here, Bureau of Labor Statistics may be here, sub may, we are finding the same. Now, India has a peculiar problem, which is similar to Chinese. We call it graduate unemployment. The more educated the cohort, the lesser the likelihood that they are actually working. Now, you realize again, we are living at a time when old economics is flipped on its head. Because we went to school and college and studied our backs off because we were told if you don't have good grades, you will not go to good college, you will not get a good job. But that seems to be inverted that the more educated you are, you have the luxury to not work. So in NEET category, I really think the time has come. And I've asked MOSPI to do it. We must add another category which is very sharp, which is taking exams. Your 20s are being spent in a highly unproductive activity, which is not a skill building. You are neither getting trained, nor you are in education, nor you are in employment called taking exams for government jobs. And it's an anathema right now, because, and again, this I know, this is Telangana and Andhra. So I was just looking at the number, 2 lakh people are taking for the state and so on. But in many states, this is far more acute. Now, typically what happens is 20s is the time when you acquire skills that is eventually going to be used in the labor market. Taking exam is not. In fact, there's an excellent paper, and I would recommend you should all read it, in the Journal of Public Economics, where they look at a natural experiment that happened in Tamil Nadu. Where for 4 years they suspended recruitment in the government jobs of the state. What they found is the cohort, what you're basically saying is people who did not take the exam, their lifetime earnings are higher than people who have spent more than X number of years taking exam for government jobs. So not only are you wasting time today, you have fundamentally weakened your lifelong earnings because you have eaten away into your own resource and time. So this is a very harmful effect. Now, we can't just say, oh, don't take exams. And that is where the time use surveys come in. And this is to all my friends who are part of bureaucracy. I am now a full-time government employee. I appreciate the problem. But there is a very severe problem in making government jobs seem so appealing. Right? Of course, there is a huge push for administrative reform and all of that. Lekin time use survey makes very clear that government employees work less. They have 3 hours more of leisure per day. It's not for nothing. That it's not just the money. These are good jobs. So working hours, आपने लिखा है, you work very long hours, more than 48 hours. Of course, Narayan Murthy would hate this whole crowd because आप 48 hours, he's saying 70 hours. No. 36% of them are working more than that. But again, the Ministry of Statistics, the time use data that exists, and they've come out with the second round very recently. There, we say the average amount of time worked by an Indian is 44 hours. That is your average. So 48 hours is not that excessive. That is number one. There are huge state-wise variation, right? And that explains many things in terms of state economy and so on. But there is a positive correlation between the number of hours worked and GDP. In states where economy is growing, people are working. And in some ways, I think this public debate around working hours is also, it's mistargeted because the cohort which is working very hard is this young urban tech / services. Those are the people working hard, paying taxes, and those are the guys we're saying work longer. Agriculture also affects the nature of the job, right? Like in agriculture, you don't have a concept of weekend. The cow has to be milked on weekend, right? So agriculture is a bit different. But then we need to understand what is the nature of economic activities, which is linked to then working hours. Then we have states, the whole Northeast, 3 hours lesser per day. You see, these are the bigger problems. I think from an economic perspective, we do want more working hours, but towards what? So I think from this cohort, we might want to understand, link the working hours to the nature of the jobs they are doing. By and large, I'm of course going to read a lot more into it. And another thing, आप defensively ये कहती रहती है कि causality नहीं है. Renu ji, it's not our job to show causality. Don't worry. Good research are stylized facts. कोई intervention नहीं देख रही है. If intervention हुआ, उसका outcome. You are telling us girls are studying, but reading comprehension खराब है. उसमें क्या causality? The point is quality of education is becoming a concern. And this is why, while years of education are increasing, your wages are stagnant. Your wages are stagnant because your markets are always telling you that productivity is बढ़ नहीं रही है, people are not employable. आप degree दे रहे हो, but they don't have the skill. So I think a lot of the research we are doing on education and actual skill, we have to understand what is skill. Right? So reading comprehension is naturally. Therefore, also look at Asar. What do Asar find for Telangana? Somehow we have to tell a bigger story when it comes to quality of education / skill. Because almost all the industry surveys are telling us that today we can raise the capital. The biggest constraint to growth is skilled manpower. We are not getting skilled people. But how can that be when we are getting more educated than ever? People are in school. ये क्या हो रहा है? So obviously quality is a very big problem. And then I think we should have something very precise is not happening. And industry, the kind of job that is useful, the kind of skill that is useful, we are not measuring any of it. I think we need to also have a note for the skill ministry. Because so far again we are thinking more from education head. But skill, not being able to read is a fundamental skill issue. We've had a ministry with dedicated tasks and frankly a lot of resource, which is called skilling and reskilling and so on. Perhaps, from this very, very insightful study, we need to also have a brochure or some kind of a policy note, which must be for the skill ministry. But we could just continue talking. I'd love to hear his मुझे एक बजे तक है
Thank you so much. Shamika, it's been delightful listening to you, and I like the way you come on to problems head on. And so, and I also appreciate the fact that you're one of the few people who understand that the DM's job, one DM's job, when I was district magistrate in Gazipur, I think we had 22 crore log, and I was all alone. But there has been a sea change since then. Because when I was district magistrate 87, 88, the government trusted me completely. I didn't have a lot of people breathing down my neck. I was independent to take decisions, and my decisions were honored by the government. Even in a volatile situation, the government supported me. I had a flat, I had many things, I had an SP who didn't cooperate with me, even though I was expected to deliver, but he was whittling away at my powers and creating all kinds of problems. So, but even then, I knew government supported me. Today, this is not the case. I have been both CDO and DL. I was CDO in Kanpur, that was just before this posting, and DL later on. But I knew I was responsible for both the law and order and the development of the district. But when I became commissioner in 2000, this was not the situation. There was a separate CTO whittling away at the powers of the district magistrate, and the two were not often cooperating with each other. So, a lot of changes have come about in the structure, and without the government realizing what they are doing. Maybe they did it in some political compulsion or something, but what they have done is undermine the district magistrate's powers, but they have loaded the district magistrate with a lot of responsibility. As commissioner, I would ask my DM, ये क्या हो रहा है, ये क्यों नहीं हो रहा है? Then he would say, Madam, CTO से पूछिए, उसको करना है. But somehow the public comes to the district magistrate, and the public asks the district magistrates the accountability, responsibility as with that poor chappie who's there, stretched 24/7. I don't know these job things about people working less and all, but it was always a 24/7 type of job. You could never refuse anybody, even as commissioner, I could refuse anybody. And so it was a kind of a job. So I was very happy that you realized कि एक आदमी को अकेले सब पूरी जिम्मेदारी है of so many people. Any problem, they would come to me. Even as commissioner, I mean, these are very traditional roles, maybe UP and Bihar, I would say, where people look up to you to find solutions to their problems. I had women at my gate in Jhansi, Bundelkhand, which is again a very poor area. Every day in the morning, they would come to me with all kinds of problems. Do something for us. And I think in a lot of ways, it was to give us some financial independence. We are stressed, we are desperate. We need people. There were so many problems. I found so many young widows, women who said they were widows, with 2, 3 children. I said, what will happen to all the young men? I mean, how do they die so early? So somebody said it's not that. It's because they were bonded liver. Once they had 2, 3 children, they were sent back. So look at this thing of trafficking of women. Of course, then I didn't know Lego. I would come to her, ask us, इस पे एक study तो करो कि what is happening in these areas where they have nothing. I mean, we all know about Bundelkhand and its problems, and agriculture भी नहीं है. And then if the area is deprived, the citizens are deprived, and that is there. Anyway, coming back to the topic, yesterday, me and Mr. Reddy, we were there at this conference of Educate Girls, which is a small NGO set up by this remarkable lady who said that she herself was being married off at the age of, when she was very young to a divorcee because she came from a very hostile environment with four children, and then she was rescued, given some education, went on to do London School of Economics, and she was setting up this NGO to give women a second chance. And the statistics, which I don't know because I don't have much of a head for figures, my habit in school was to use maths. So even though I was scared of figures. So this, and there is a disability I've discovered now to explain this thing. So this, she's to give girls a second chance. This was in, of course, Rajasthan, and maybe I think it was in somewhere in Andhra or Telangana. But these are better areas, some southern states. North India, you have many more problems. And in fact, I feel sometimes that we have not progressed at all. We sort of went back in UP and Bihar. I'm being very blunt. You know, it is not politically correct, but to say all this despite all the hype that we've had. But recently I went back to Gazipur, where I was horrified. There has not been any improvement, excepting maybe some few shops selling high-end consumer goods, one or two hotels, and maybe a couple of bakeries. क्योंकि 87, 88 में डबल रोटी भी नहीं मिलती थी. So it was really back of beyond. अफीम मिलता था, डबल रोटी नहीं मिलती थी. Now, so she said, they said that this need figure is for about 9 crore girls, 15 to 29 years. And I felt, what a waste. These girls sitting at home, some are being married off, some are not married, because even that is not producing a lot of financial stress on families to marry your daughters. And maybe that's another reason why child marriage happens and also why women are not getting married. This figure is also magma rising in the country of unmarried girls. So we have to look into it. Why 21% to 25% of our girls are not getting married? It may be due to the dowry aspects or being whatever it is. Anyway, I was very happy that Renu has also taken up this neat group of people, and she's explaining why it is so many people. I mean, there are many explanations. And one I agree with Dr. Ravi that it is because youth are not working anymore. They don't want to work. I was associated with an NGO called Age Ventures India that was training people for old age care. And nobody was interested in doing those training programs. They were just not interested in getting into this care economy. And so that means, I mean, it is hard work looking after old people, even though the jobs are there. Our workforce is there, but nobody wants to do this work. So it is somewhere there is a problem here. And another thing is, which I'm very happy you've picked up this mental health thing. You know, in my service, for some time you're in Delhi, and then you have to go back to your state. Now, this time, last time when I went back, that was 2010 or 2010 or 2011, I found that there is so much of mental illness. You know, young ladke who are working with us, chapasi hai, koi teenager hai, koi ye hai, who are put with us. They were into depression, anxiety, probably because they were not getting jobs. Everybody wants to do a government job. It is not as cozy once you come inside as you think of it from outside, but there are a few things which are sure. One is a pension, which was a good thing during the COVID era where people were just given the pink slips. But, and then the second perception that there is some extra income. And, but it is not that cozy, but it is very aspirational because people look at the Lal Batti, they think of being collectors, Lal Batti hai, ye hai, wo hai, but they don't see the grind that goes behind these jobs. I mean, it's really 24/7. You have no time, nothing. Expectations are on. So much. There is a very funny story about DM Azamgad. I wasn't there. When he used to get up early in the morning, he used to find people sitting in his porch. So he said, तुम लोग इतने सवेरे क्यों आते हो? Said, क्योंकि आप मिल जाएंगे. So it is that kind of intrusion into your personal and private life. So and there's another funny story. I mean, sorry, I'm making me reminisce. I'm going off the track. That when I was collected Ghazipur, I had very long hair. So women would come and pull at it. I said, मेरी आप छोटी क्यों खींच रही हैं? देख रहे थे कि असली है कि नकली है. So you know, this kind of things people don't talk about. They talk about other things. They don't realize how intrusive things can be. Anyway, so Dr. Shamika, I'm so happy you have taken up these things. You know, head on, taken the bull by the horn when you were talking about youth being aspirational, not wanting to do work, avoiding work, but in some ways they have the right to be aspirational. And again, I would support this thing. They are just appearing for exams. I had gone for an interview to the state government, to the UPPSC, and I was horrified that people are spending 10 years, 15 years in just preparing for any kind of exams, and there were such well-qualified people. But you can't stop aspirations. We have to find solutions for it. We have to make these jobs also, other jobs out of the government also as glamorous, as desirable, as aspirational. Another thing which we were talking of obesity, and I would also like to lose weight. But again, probably we are going into the better states where the actual incomes have gone up. But in my state, and I had gone to Bihar, which was for some work, and I found that people जिसको कहते हैं ना गल रहे थे. This kind of poverty, a kind of a thinness I had never seen in adults. And I was horrified. I had gone there to क्या होता है पितृ में करने के लिए, and everywhere I went, and you found these thinned out people. I felt that they were not getting enough food, which is one of the basic things that we all need. So we also need to see when they're saying that where the money is being spent in household incomes, whether it is on alcohol, substance abuse, or what. Why are we losing out on healthy citizens? They did not look healthy. I mean, I've seen poverty both in Jhansi, there was, and in even East UP, but I have never seen this kind of sort of poverty what I saw in Bihar. It was scary. I mean, we also need to, I know your longitudinal studies are there in the south, but you really need to look into what's happening in these states also. What is happening? Because, and yes, I'm just winding up. I know. Last thing which I would like to say again is wasting and stunting. It may have reduced in certain areas, but it is not in my state. And it is important to give importance to wasting and stunting, because this leads to disability. A mother who doesn't get enough food, a child who doesn't get enough nutrition during its gestation period or when it's in the food, often has, becomes disabled, loses that mental, I mean, कैपेसिटी ब्रेन की बढ़ती नहीं है जितनी फुल न्यूट्रिशन में होती है. So in a way, are we producing, I can't say defective, are we producing children who are not healthy right from the start? Anyway, there are many issues. Dr. Shabika, it was delightful for me to listen to you, and I like the way you just went, yes, yeah. And you interpreted the statistics to, I hope you are able to make a lot of difference to the policies of the government. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We will now open the floor for question and answers. Divya and Shuli are there in the mic. Anybody, those who have questions, please raise your hands and we'll give you the mic.
Hello. Hi. This is a wonderful presentation. Thank you. In one of your last reports, I think it was from 2023, you also looked at agency and self-efficacy, disparities in gender, emerging particularly at age 19, late adolescence. Was this captured in this survey?
We have all the psychosocial aspects captured in this survey as well. We haven't presented them because they're not done for the fact sheet. Like I said, we've just taken some variables and analyzed them, but yeah, that is there, very much there.
Okay, fantastic. I was just curious about if there are correlations between need, agency, age of marriage, and how they're emerging 3 years later.
We also have grit. We continue to have grit, right? We have grit in this round as well. So we've also measured grit. That would be a good correlation to study.
Thank you. I will look at it.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think presentations were quite fascinating. And most of the results, I would say, were on the expected directions. Accepting the evaluations which Dr. Shamika has very rightly placed, right? At the very state of ground. 21 or 2 issues, like on computers, obesity, anemia, job satisfaction. Job satisfaction is a subjective issue. So you can't make any kind of judgment on that. And on mental health, mostly I find that women were doing better than men in many of the things. But teenage fertility and age at marriage, at least in Telangana, because studies based on Telangana, the kind of stuff which we have been hearing in Andhra Pradesh, the age at marriage was not changing much. Basically, they want to start early and stop early. That was the kind of thing about Andhra which was known. Maybe you can do. Now, I don't know whether I'll be getting a chance for Shamika, because that was an interesting issue on poverty. Can I use this occasion? Your keynote address was very fascinating. You did a lot of interesting issues, some controversial, but some of the, but it was very highly loaded. You touched upon all the issues. My question is basically on poverty, because this was a controversial issue started way back in early 70s or late 60s, you can say, when Minhas, Tendulkar, Minhas Datta Chaudhary, and since you seem to be have good economic background. So this controversy started over there, and we started, saying at that time that this is a multi-dimensional, like health and well-being is a multi-dimensional. But now, Ramesh Chand, who is a regular member of the Niti Aayog, and you have, also tried on the Raghunathan report. The way the multi-dimensional poverty index has been worked out, right? It's a statistical artifact. As an econometrician, I can tell you, you give me the chance, because already they have said, and it is being also propagated by Prime Minister and all ministry people, that about 232 or 33 million people have crossed the multidimensional poverty line. The way the multidimensional poverty index has been generated has methodological issue, has selection of the variable issue, because that is very important. Like all your programs, aspirational districts, aspirational, blocks, etc. It is getting, but the way you select and based on the indicator, you can make, top C, top plus C, kind of thing. Coming back to poverty only, you had done health, education, standard of living. The weightage system which you had devised, and most of the ministries are using it. I'm not talking about the rocket science, subjective weightage which has been given to the 10 indicators, 2 in health, 2 in, because one third, and then you go for advancing. So this equal weightage system is a subjective weightage system which is not proper. And I'm not talking about the rocket science. I'm talking simply because a lot of my PhD students, as the people scholars, they are doing PCA, principal component analysis. Most of these 10 indicators, if you take at, you don't have to give equal weightage. And this poverty index has been utilized for all things, including these 232 million people who have gone out. You give me the selection of the variable, I can bring it to 270. And if you ask, I can bring it down to, 200. So this is, the way which probably has been done. PCA, principal component analysis, if you do that, most of these 10 indicators, like health and well-being, even in your, indicators out of 115 indicators which you are doing for that. So these 10 indicators should be given the objective weightage rather than the subjective weightage. Selection of the variables, you just change that, you can change the figures. You can bring it up if it suits the ministry. I can bring it down if I want to be critical about the thing. So these kind of indexing probably needs some objective weightage system, and I'm not talking of the rocket science. It is available in all the packages, we are doing it, etc. Now, one or two aspects probably which Shamika did not touch upon.
Perhaps just because I might forget.
Pardon?
I don't look at multidimensional index.
You?
I do not look at multidimensional index.
But the government.
Yeah, well, take it up with Professor Ramesh Chandra.
Ah.
I want, and that is why I made it a point to bring it up in the keynote. This is Rangarajan's poverty line, which is based on consumption expenditure of the household, which includes food, housing, conveyance, health, and education. It has nothing to do with the weights that you're talking about.
It is nothing to do with that.
This
Okay.
is your old school poverty line, which is why you can do the 29 point whatever percent 11 years back, because you do have an assessment from that.
But Shavika, one thing, because if I will go at the annual report.
And on the MDI,
Sorry.
dimensional index.
Sorry.
Well, Nitika, I thought that I really think, I think the right way to do would be to write a paper on it. If you think, I think the PCA, what you mentioned, I take the point very seriously. करिए उस पे paper publish करिए कि if you vary the weights, this is what your alternate estimates would be. I would love to read it because eventually we have to agree on the robustness of the methodology first. फिर number तो आपको जो मर्जी आप number दो. I mean, we all know enough econometrics to know the relevance of weights, and that is why I take Rangarajan's poverty line very seriously. उसका एक solid methodology paper है 11-12 लिखा हुआ था to the economists and the researchers in the room. Go back and read that. It's a very well done. I really think we have a paucity of research. That is why we get into the apples and oranges basket. And MDI is not a substitute to consumption expenditure measures of cost. It's community based. Not to discount it. 25 crore is the number. I think it's a remarkable progress because we've done very well on the amenities side of things. But actual consumption expenditure gap. That is why the 4% is a remarkable number. वहाँ पे 30 crore people have come out of poverty as per Rangaraj. So in fact, the numbers I'm giving you are far higher, but that's not the reason I feel optimistic. I feel optimistic because the methodology is robust. It's very essentially वही तो है. That's what we are discussing. It's not data, methodology.
Anyhow, I am very happy, for your, reaction to that. But then we should be cautious because the annual report which has come out by the Niti Aayog, the title, sorry, am I taking more time? Okay, I'll just stop with one line. Shamika, then we should be very particular about the annual report which has come out by Niti Aayog just recently, 24-25. The title pages and headlines, they say this 232 or 23 point something, 232 million people have escaped the multi-dimensionally poverty index. So, right? So what I'm saying that you are in a crucial, you're in a crucial position. You're in a crucial position. Okay.
I want to know, just,
All right, I just very briefly, oh, sorry.
no, just two points. One is that I've been analyzing the UDI's data, which give by religion as well as caste, and it seemed that the overall, the secondary, everything is confirmed what you have seen. So just as the STs in some things have, their growth has been the least. One of them you found it higher, but initially you found it lower, and Muslims also. So I don't know whether it is a lack of um, geographical access because people tend to live in clusters, but if that can be looked at. The other is about the need is, as you said, aspiration isn't wrong. And, if a person is graduate, they would definitely like to have work better than a person who's class 12 pass. So the problem is, might be the children doesn't want to do work after getting more educated, but there is a lack of useful training and lack of decent employment. And that is something government is able to.
Thank you. I thought it was fascinating. Everything Renu does is truly remarkable and path-breaking. And at the same time, Shamika, what you said, and and all the other speakers, it was wonderful and eye-opening. Thank you so very much. I think many things which Renu has found out today actually confirm either what we know anecdotally or we have been reading elsewhere. So I think you done a huge contribution in that angle. And I was thinking that other arguments which we read basically now is that since we focus so much on the economy and economy growth, and at the same time, for many years, we've had many schemes which provide so many facilities to so many people literally free of cost, sort of the dole kind of society. Perhaps what's been happening the past many years is that instead of focusing enough on our young people becoming producers in the economy, they are actually becoming consumers more than anything else. And I don't really blame all of them, to be absolutely honest. Your data shows that 97% of the upper decile is on the internet every day, and the poorest is on the internet 83%. They're not on computers. So it's very obviously they're on phones. So the very big question is, what are they doing on the phone? Are they actually being productive on the phone? Or are they consuming entertainment which is perhaps not good for society or for themselves? And which now scientists all over the world are saying impacts your neurons and your cognitive skills, and the wrong parts of your brain is being excited. At the same time, Renu's data, which is marvelous, shows obesity perhaps due to eating the wrong kinds of ultra-processed and processed foods, which again have the same harmful effects. Now, if we combine all of this with the huge advertising on binge watching films, binge eating, ultra processed food, the cost is going down. So it's cheaper to eat a packet of chips and bread rather than it is to eat healthy food, unfortunately. And at the same time, children and their families get so many other benefits. So perhaps it's slightly inevitable that the young people are being inclined more towards becoming consumers rather than producers. But I don't know, I'm just thinking aloud, and I think it was absolutely marvelous. Thank you very much.
No, I would just like to add, I won't take much time. But when we were in NCPCR, we were highly concerned about the sexual abuse of children. And what we found in most cases, there were quite a few cases, especially of these adolescents committing child sexual abuse, was that they were watching inappropriate content. So we are wasting this beautiful technology, even grown-ups. I don't know what's the sense in sending those good morning WhatsApp messages. This technology is being wasted. And, I hate getting those class things, images of God, and you don't know what to do. Whether deletion of those images is 50%, I don't know. I feel a little, scared about it. Anyway, I think now we can come to an end. Sacrament is now looking at me. She's glaring at me.
Yes, we'll close the question and answer session. And may I request Dr. Singh to present the token of appreciation to our chief guest?
Play.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
May I now request Dr. Singh to Professor Rexy to request a token of appreciation to our chair. Thank you. Just to conclude, can I request Dr. Singh to please deliver the vote of thanks?
You've already done it. You've already done it. I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of you, Dr. Shaman Ganavi, Mr. Tikakkar, all of you for coming. My colleagues have come from Hyderabad, of course. We are all part of the Young Lives family, our young researchers who have worked overtime, often work till 8 and 9 at night. Longer hours than what we would want, but yes, that's the reality. And of course, Saltanat and everybody who's been working behind it, all the time to make sure that we get to you and get the fact sheets out. And of course, Oxford, our team and the Young Lives team in Oxford, who has actually done most of the analysis for this headline. We're going to be working on the state headline reports now, which may be different from this, and we look forward to continuing being in touch with you. Our country report would come out in a few months. Thank you all. Thank you, Vice Chancellor.
Please join us for lunch.
एंड कर दूं हाँ एंड